Hi everyone, I'm Scott Feinberg at The Hollywood Reporter, and we are so thrilled to be joined by Tom Hiddleston, who is now Emmy nominee Tom Hiddleston. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So the project, of course, is The Night Manager. This 6-part limited series is the term now to use, not miniseries, from AMC. We talked a lot about it in May when you came in to do the podcast, which we hope you will go and find. It's on our Awards Chatter podcast. But I guess, first of all, how does it feel to be Emmy nominee Tom Hiddleston?
It's great. It's great. Thank you very much for that. I'm genuinely just so thrilled for the show because it was a huge labour of love for everybody, and it felt as though it was made in a way that people made. We were quite a small number of people actually making it, and it's had this incredible effect. And you know, for the last 3 or 4 months, people stop me in the street and they will tell me how much they enjoyed it, and that is the most thrilling feedback. Is when people go, "Oh my God, we watched it in 2 days," or we couldn't stop.
Yeah.
So that's really nice.
So
It feels great.
Let me ask you how you first heard of The Night Manager, which was obviously this John McCrae book before it was the series.
Yeah.
When did it cross your radar at that point?
I knew about John le Carré, but I didn't know about The Night Manager until I read the first episode. There was this, it's just incredibly precise and a thrilling screenplay of episode 1. It was 60 pages, and anyone who's seen it, you're introduced to Jonathan Pyne in the Arab Spring riots in Cairo in 2011, and he is a sort of figure of mystery, has a military background, has a superficial calm and physical grace in a combat situation, but also masking this incredible turbulent interior. The relationship with Sophie, how he's then becomes embroiled in the Roper, with Richard Roper, and it was just such a brilliant introduction to a great character and a contemporary world, and I think an important subject.
So before we go any further, we just want to say send in your questions. We're going to get to them in a few minutes, but first I want to make sure that we dig a little deeper into this because it's a very layered, textured story. And from your perspective, when you're reading this, you're roughly the same age as Jonathan Pyne. Did you see other things in common, or things that, what did you really connect to about this guy? It's
interesting. I found his private soul fascinating, and if you read the novel, you're really allowed. Le Carré allows you into that. Is that he's someone searching, and he has I found his moral compass and his sense of courage very inspiring and moving. I think he's incredibly romantic. The idea that he's brave enough to stand up for something, to know as a soldier that what Roper is doing is deeply wrong, and part of his military background gives him greater authority, I think, in that decision. And I just found him incredibly brave, that he believes, alongside Angela Bier, played brilliantly by Olivia Colman, that Richard Roper is a figure in the world who is practicing in the darkest arts. He is an evil man, and the profiteering from the selling of weapons under the table to the highest bidder is what is making our world so incredibly dangerous, especially because he is, he's a British citizen, and so he's abusing his privileges as a British citizen. And Pyne standing up against that, and Bier standing up against that, something I find very powerful.
Now, this project people have been trying to bring to the screen for years and years, and in fact, Roper, who you mentioned, the face of evil, is played by Hugh Laurie, who has had some funny comments about that because he was hoping, I think a decade ago, maybe more, he wanted to be you.
He is.
And what's he said? It's sort of like a little more hair ago, and whatever, a few wrinkles ago.
Yeah,
he
did say. I mean, the novel came out in '93, and it was his favourite novel. It remains, I think, one of his favourite novels, and he tried to option it and to play Pyne. And in his own words, hair falls out and knees go creaky.
Right. So now he gets to be the bad guy.
He gets to be the bad guy. But I couldn't have done it without him.
Yeah.
He was the sort of primary engine. He was the driving force through the entire shoot. His passion is something we all latched onto, because he loves the book so much. He felt such a responsibility to honouring Le Carré, to honouring the finesse and nuance in his writing, which is very specific. He's not like any other thriller writer. So Hugh was a great champion, and is just about the most irreverent man in the world. So it's a beautiful performance by him.
Now, it wasn't that long ago that it was considered a step in the wrong direction to go from being a movie star, which you certainly are with Loki and all these other parts, and then also great smaller movies like I Saw the Light, which people should check out. You were terrific as Hank Williams. It was considered a step in the wrong direction to go to the small screen. Now it's like the cool thing to do. It's can you talk about, just even in the course of your young career, how that's evolved?
Well, I think as actors that I know, and we talk about it, you gravitate towards the best writing, and I think the way people consume entertainment or dramatic art now is that I think people don't mind whether it's a movie or a piece of television, or they just want it to be good.
Yeah.
They just want it to be intelligent and well made, and so the thrill for me of doing this is that I truly believe The Night Manager is better at 6 hours than it would have been at 2. Is that you get to know the characters, you can extend the drama between them, and the compression of the time in a 2-hour format, I think, would have impoverished the material. It wouldn't quite have been as thrilling. I love that at the end of every episode there's an edge of your seat cliffhanger. People are sort of that propels people into the next one, and it just allows you more time, I think, to get invested in. But in fact, I met someone this morning. This is absolutely true. Who stopped me on the way out and said, "Why was it only 6 episodes? I wanted more." He was furious. He went, "I love the show." He buttonholed me in the street.
That's
so. Yeah.
I don't know if you have enough more hours to give after you're a busy man. That's asking a lot.
Yeah.
But one thing that people may not know is that all 6 episodes, I believe, were overseen, directed by Susanna Bier, a Danish female filmmaker who has won an Oscar, and maybe you can tell us a little bit more about her.
She is extraordinary, and the quality of the show is in large part to her credit. She has an extraordinary ability to see. She immediately knew that it had to be contemporary, had to have a very contemporary resonance. This book was written in the early 90s, and the power of it, I think, is to speak to what does it mean to be an arms dealer, and we have to talk about that now. So she oversaw all of that. She very much, as soon as she came on board, she said, "I want a woman to play Angela Burr, and I want that woman to be Olivia Colman." And I think it's part of just her method, is that she's incredibly rigorous about truthfulness in acting. She didn't allow any of us to, if she doesn't believe it, she's very straight with you about that. So I think her demand is that it has to be real. And her connection to what is a truthful reflection of real life, how people really behave, how people really respond to mystery, to danger, to sexual attraction, to charisma. All of these things were things that she was very precise about, and I think that's why I credit her with all the performances in that way. She really kind of she fought for truth in that regard.
So when you are churning out 6 hours of material, that takes a lot of your time to make, a lot more than that. Where did you guys shoot, over how long a period? And with something like this, is it shooting an installment at a time, or are you jumping all over the place?
We shot it like a film. So it's we shot like many productions, according to locations. We shot for 75 days, which was 15 weeks in 4 countries. Switzerland, England, London and Devon, then Morocco, and then Mallorca. So we were jumping around the story. Our Morocco section felt to me like the biggest and most challenging aspect of the shoot. We were there for 7 weeks. Marrakesh became Cairo, so episodes 1 and 6. And also the desert just outside Marrakesh was the Turkey-Syria border in episode 5. And that just was also the most intense material. That's where the drama really, I mean, in Mallorca it's a little bit more measured. There's sort of, it's about people getting to know each other. But we started in Zermatt in Switzerland. And we were there for 3 days, and my first scene was that scene in the restaurant at the end of episode 1 with Olivia Colman. Yeah. And we both couldn't believe it. We were, in an empty restaurant with the Matterhorn mountain behind us. And it felt like the most incredible, auspicious beginning.
That's great.
It's a very exciting shoot, very challenging, and I did that. Nothing else happened in my life during that time. I was just completely in the zone. We all were, to be honest.
No, that's great. Let's go. I'm going to take a break from my questions. We'll come back when necessary. But let's go to your questions and Facebook to see what you'd like to hear from Tom.
Sure. Eileen wants to know, what was the most challenging things in playing this specific character?
I think the most challenging thing in playing Jonathan Pyne was trying to keep track of his identity at different points in the shoots. He goes under 4 different names with a passport for every name. Jonathan Pyne, Jack Linden, Thomas Quince and Andrew Birch. And the costume designer and I had very specific costumes, which actually made it helpful, but because we were jumping around, I couldn't do a sort of big physical change. I couldn't, there was no way of growing my hair out to look different. So that was the hardest thing, I think. Yeah.
Another one from Facebook.
This is from Tom Hiddleston Universe. The Night Manager was excellent. Was there anything from the book that didn't make it to the screen that you wish had been included?
Great question. Was there anything from the screen, from the book, that wasn't included? So a couple of things. We changed the ending completely. Anyone who's read the book will know that. They don't go back to the Nefertiti Hotel in Cairo in the book, and that's what we did. We felt that was very dramatic. And there is a section before he infiltrates Roper's crew, his inner circle, in Canada. It's a long section in Canada where Pyne takes on another identity, and he's sort of even more isolated as a traveller on the run from really feeling so much shame and guilt about Sophie.
Let's go back to Facebook.
Yeah, Sid wants to know, which scene took the most takes?
Which scene took the most takes? Gosh.
Is Susanna somebody that generally does a lot of takes?
Well, no. I mean, she likes to move fast, and we didn't have a lot of time, if I'm honest. Because we shot 360 pages in 75 days, which means you're shooting a serious page count per day. Off the top of my head, which scene took the most takes? There were some complicated scenes where lots of people are involved, where you need to pick up coverage. My memory is that the scene in Roper's suite in the hotel in Zermatt, we had to make sure we got everyone's reactions. There's a lot going on in that scene. Pyne is listening to Corky's conversation. Roper and Jed are having another conversation. Sandy Langborn and Caroline come in at the same time. There was a lot of coverage we needed to clear up there.
Back to Facebook.
Lyric wants to know, what motivates you during your acting?
What motivates me during my acting? The pure desire for the work to be as good as it can be. I care so much about it. I care so much about film and television. I feel like this job is the one I've always wanted to do, and I feel so lucky that I get to do it. So I really, once I'm on set, I just want it to be the best it can be.
How does the Night Manager stack up versus, against the other things that you've done in the past in terms of degree of difficulty for you? Did you feel more challenged by this than other things you've done before?
Well, every job has its own challenges, I think. Playing Hank Williams, the challenge was complete physical transformation. I had to look different, I had to sound different, I had to sing and play and inhabit a very different spirit to my own. He was very self-destructive, he was an alcoholic, and he was a huge musical talent. I am none of those things. Pyne and the Night Manager presented... It was challenging in a way because I knew that the character would express himself most effectively in silence. So that this was a character who is essentially a spy, and I had to try to find a way to communicate his inner turmoil without everybody, all the other characters catching on to that. So try to do actually very little, but still to try and communicate what was going on inside. So that was the challenge. But I really enjoyed it. Honestly, the Night Manager has been transformative in lots of ways. My investment in it was huge, and Hugh Laurie and I were both invited to be executive producers, which meant we were part of the development process of the scripts. And I loved that. I just loved the extra inclusion, the being part of more conversations about where the story should go. And I felt very responsible for it. And that responsibility is something I enjoy very much. Yeah.
All right, let's go back to the questions from Facebook.
Switching gears slightly, what character from any play, book, or film would you like to play?
Ooh.
From Charlene.
What character from any playbook or film? My God. I mean, I used to have a list when I was younger of all the characters I dreamed of playing, and the characters I've ended up playing are far more interesting than any of those. So I've since learned that there's no point in making lists or plans, and you should just sort of try to welcome the surprises as they come.
Right. Back to Facebook.
Yeah, kind of along the same lines. If you could be a hero instead of a villain, who would you be?
Well, I'm not always a villain.
I think they're talking about Loki.
Yeah.
Not fun.
Guys, you gotta see his other stuff too. Come on.
Yeah, Jonathan Pyne, I hope is heroic.
Right.
That's how I feel about it. Yeah, and as I've said before, every villain is a hero in his own mind. Poor old Loki. He's so desperate to be the hero. I don't know. It's I honestly loved playing Loki. As a character, I've loved playing. I still do. I'm back in Thor Ragnarok now, and he's just a character I never would have expected. But I'm sure. I hope I hope there's more of both on the horizon. I'm not finished yet.
I just love the story, which you can hear more about on the podcast, about how you had this whole vast history with Kenneth Branagh before Thor. So people think that was like the start. There's a lot more.
Yeah, well, that was why I think that collaboration was so enjoyable for both of us, because we had done. Kenneth Branagh and I had been in a play called Ivanov, which is an early Chekhov play. We acted together on stage. We were in Wallander for the BBC, and we'd done a radio play.
Yeah, it's like checking off every video.
So this felt like sort of a culmination of a long collaboration, and that was part of the thrill of making up that character.
You guys just need to put out a record together. That's it. All right, back to Facebook.
Okay, Chris wants to know, this summer has been a high-profile one for you personally. What have you learned about the culture of celebrity?
Wow. Well, it's interesting. We all live in a world where every phone has a camera, and there's nothing new really about the spotlight on me. I think there's the spotlight. That's what happens when you're a public figure. What have I learned about it? I've learned to... I don't quite know. Maybe it's too soon to tell. But let me give you a proper response. I've learned that there are many sides to a story, and that that sometimes there are a lot of stories out there which are false, and the hardest thing is to try to not let those falsehoods affect your own life. That's what I would say.
It might be worth adding that's the Instagram you are now new to, which might be a more friendly environment sometimes than other social media platforms.
Yeah. Well, I know. I literally just joined Instagram a week ago, and it's been fun so far. So yeah.
And we got a picture of Loki. So for those guys, you can go and see that there. But back to the questions from you.
Sure. Marlena wants to know, do you have any aspirations to write or direct in the future?
If I'm allowed, I would love that. It's something that I feel I don't have the hubris to jump into just yet. But my love for movies and for television I'm interested in the bigger picture, and I feel that actors are a huge part of that. But my passion really is for the form itself, and I can't help it when I'm on set. I get excited about the shots and where the camera is and how the story is being told. So it's maybe one day. We'll see.
I think we have time for 3 or 4. So let's go.
There's so many. So,
yeah, sure.
Okay, we've had a few people touch on this, but Rotem asks, when will we see you in a rom-com?
Ooh.
Or just a comedy, people are asking.
I'd love to do either of those things. I think that I do think that a rom-com is possibly one of the hardest things to really get right, because actually the best ones have a truthfulness about them. That it's very difficult. There are pitfalls you can fall into. It could be too syrupy, too sentimental. And if you make a really good one, I think there's no better time in the cinema. I'd love to try one day.
Do you have a favorite rom-com?
I have 2 off the top of my head: 4 Weddings and a Funeral.
Yep.
And Pretty Woman.
Good
I think
choices.
they're both really fine movies.
Yeah. All right, back to Facebook. The final 2. Who gets the lucky ticket?
Let's see. I'm going to ask one of these here, actually.
So pre-submitted.
Yeah, pre-submitted. I like this one. Who are your acting heroes?
Oh, I've got so many. I just recently watched the documentary about Marlon Brando. Listen to Me, Marlon. If you haven't seen it, find it, buy it, rent it.
Also nominated for an Emmy.
Marlon Brando.
The
documentary. I'm
yeah.
so pleased to hear that. I didn't know
Yeah.
that. It's just so beautiful, and it's such an extraordinary insight into his life and his work and his craft and his personal challenges, and you see what a huge spirit he had. Really amazing. And he's always been, somebody I've respected. So many people. I seem to gather more acting heroes every day. Anyone who does great work. I always looked up to Daniel Day-Lewis as I was training. Al Pacino, Robert De Niro, Alan Rickman. Off the top of my head, Anthony Hopkins. I remember having a very profound reaction to Anthony Hopkins' work in The Remains of the Day. I think that's an amazing film. So seek that out if you haven't seen it. The list is endless. So.
And last but not least.
Okay, we've had a lot of people asking about this too. Alex says, what was with the vodka martini in The Night Manager? There's a lot of James Bond.
Right.
Yeah, it's so interesting. People latched onto that as a literally, it was an improvised line. And Hugh Laurie actually is very partial to a vodka martini. And maybe the weekend before, we had all had martinis together in the bar where we were all staying, and so it just was the first thing that came into my head.
How do you take them? shaking nuts there.
I could possibly tell you. That would be revealing state secrets.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
It was very strange how that people sort of thought, oh my god, it's a reference, but it literally was just. There was this stage direction in the script, which is Pyne orders some drinks to distract attention from having been talking to Jed and Caroline, and I just said, "Can I have a vodka martini?" So there you go.
All right. Well, no rosebud moment, I guess. Don't read into it. Thank you so much for your time. Congratulations
Pleasure.
again.
Thank you so
Good to
much
see
for
you
having
again.
me.
And check out the podcast. It's really, you gave us a lot of time, and it was very enlightening. So, Awards Chatter, Tom Hiddleston.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.